Probably not.
Oh,
how to access them.
I didn't know that was even considered. You know,
Are you sure?
protein in it. Well, I went.
Do I need to be there?
I really like fish.
Fish tacos.
I love fish. I eat it for breakfast sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like fish too.
Salmon. I do like beef tenderloin.
I'll eat a steak.
Yeah.
Ribeye.
And if it's on the grill, that tastes
Yeah.
really nice. Oh, there he is. He's eating. Mr. Murray
Just,
munching on something.
ready?
Mr. Chairman,
Call this meeting of the Land Use and Planning to order. This meeting has been notified by the clerk's office. Please rise with me and join me in a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do have Supervisor Krebs, Supervisor Pridemore, myself, and Supervisor Mary joining us on Zoom. So we have a quorum. Any revisions or changes or questions in the consent agenda, including the two pass-through items? Seeing none, I will consider them passed through. Supervisor Mary?
yes, I have a question. The agenda that was sent out seemed to be in a very casual format. Is this something new? It just seemed to be very unofficial. Or at least the agenda that's listed on the county side is.
There were no resolutions or ordinances on this agenda, so just the two discussion items. So
Okay,
it's a fairly light agenda and so may not seem as formal.
It seemed to be, well, there was no letterhead, no nothing on it, but I just didn't know if there was a particular reason. So it seemed to be very casual and unprofessional.
Oh, okay. That's what's appearing on the county site?
For the packet. If you click on the agenda, it shows up the letterhead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's a little bit different, I guess, depending on how you go through, Supervisor Mary. Because I'm going through the PrimeGov meeting viewer, and then it shows up the official way.
Okay,
So if you're viewing from the public side, it might look a little different.
that's what I was viewing through. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, so that's just the way it comes through on the public side might look just a straightforward agenda sheet. Whereas if you go through the actual PrimeGov meeting viewer, then you'll get the more formal letter-headed meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
First thing we have is the Druid Lake floodplain. Jamie, you want to speak on that?
Sure, thank you. I will introduce, I'm Jamie Ludovic, Chief Community Development Officer. I'm actually going to reintroduce Brett Schur, our Land Use Manager. He's going to just kind of give some background information on this topic, leading into potential future items that will be before the committee and board.
Okay, please proceed.
Perfect.
All right, I'm guessing you guys are somewhat familiar with this as about a year ago, when this popped up with the floodplain study. This is more focused on Druid Lake itself. So the floodplain study itself was a little over a year ago when it all commenced. And as I was kind of saying, this is focused on Druid Lake itself. So the purpose of the study, it's committed by the DNR. They do the study, they use LiDAR data to figure out better contours with better data to shrink or grow the floodplain. In this case, Druid Lake, it significantly changed it in more of a negative way for the residents on the lake. And we can kind of get into the details of that. So just a brief history, back in March of 24, the preliminary firm maps were released by FEMA and the DNR for public view. There was an open house in May at the Washington County Fair Park. I wasn't there for that, but I heard a ton of people showed up for it, with questions on why the changes, what the changes were, how it affected them. We had staff on site, the DNR had staff on site, and there's questions, a lot of questions that came up with it and how it's going to affect their property. After that, in September, the 90-day appeal process started. So the DNR notifies us and says, these maps are official, we're starting the appeal process. Anyone in an unincorporated township would come to me or staff here to submit an appeal. We did not receive any appeals from anyone from an unincorporated area, so any of the townships which we would be handling. Then in December, the 90-day appeal process ended with nothing on an unincorporated side. I can't speak on the city and villages. They might have received something through their zoning departments, but nothing from our side. Due to this, there's been a lot of kind of panic on Druid Lake to push stuff through due to the floodplain changing to an extreme. Right now, they know they're in floodplain. They're in a flood fringe district. With the new mapping, it would put them in a flood storage district. And I'll kind of go over those changes of how it's going to affect them. We did have 2 Board of Adjustment cases back in February. These 2 property owners are probably working on this Board of Adjustment case for about 8 months with my office to try to get it through while we tried to assist them to get the best results possible and also work with the DNR requirements, which can be pretty difficult to work with. They were both passed. One was for building a house there and the lots were not wide enough, so they could not meet the DNR requirements. The other one was due to a 50% rule. So they had an existing structure. They wanted to add a bedroom due to some handicap issues, and FEMA and the DNR does not see those as part of the ordinance or part of their rules. So if you're disabled, handicapped, elderly, they don't care about ADA access or any of that. It doesn't count. So this gentleman fortunately was able to get that addition, but he had to go through a lot of the process with the DNR and us to be able to get that. Currently, after the Board of Adjustments, we're waiting to update our chapter 275. So the DNR, now that the appeal process has ended, they will finalize those firm maps, and that'll be the new floodplain map. They'll give us 6 months to put that into the ordinance after they notify us, and we're required in our ordinance to use those new maps. They haven't gave us a formal notification yet, but they're suspecting February is kind of what the rumor is. So once February hits, theoretically, we'd have to have that in our ordinance. But at this time, they still have not formally notified us, so we're using the old floodplain maps or the new floodplain maps, depending on the situation with the homeowner. If it benefits them, we'll let them use the new map. If it doesn't, we'll let them use the old map. But there's still a lot of panic. People are having to build fast in the Druid Lake area because once this new regulation hits, it's going to be very tough to build or even update your home. So the new firm maps for Druid Lake is new building restrictions. The new building restrictions right now they're in the flood fringe. So they have to build their house 2 feet above floodplain elevation level. They have to have dry land access, which they usually have to get a waiver from the sheriff's department and the fire department, since there isn't technically dry land access with the floodplain levels there. And then they're also required to have their utilities 2 feet above. And kind of the kicker on these lots is a lot of them are about 50 to 60 feet wide. DNR requires 15 feet of fill around the property. So you have to raise the house 2 feet, and then you have to have 15 feet of fill around the home. It's kind of hard with a home today to be able to get 15 feet around a whole home that's only about 50 or 60 feet wide for the lot, which is what's triggering variances for reduced fill. So that's a huge issue. And currently with the new maps, it's going to put them into flood storage. So they'll still be in the flood fringe, but the DNR will overlay a flood storage layer. What that means is you can't add fill to the property or remove fill. If you do add fill, you have to remove the same amount of fill somewhere else on the property. So it's kind of contradictory if you're acquiring 15 feet of fill around a new home, but you have to remove another yards and yards off your property. It's almost impossible to do. So with Druid Lake, there's been going back to a huge push to try to build before these go through. Because once they're through, their properties are going to be hit pretty heavily, and there's a huge financial effect. Another big issue with this is we're kind of paired with two different agencies. FEMA, which is actually less restrictive than the DNR in this case. The DNR standards is the flood storage. So it's not FEMA infringing the flood storage on us, it's actually the DNR. So the FEMA doesn't recognize it, but the DNR does. So that's where this issue is kind of coming through. We do have a resolution we've been kind of working on. And Jamie, feel free to jump in whenever you'd like. The assessed property value is over 23 million on the lake. That's the land, the structures, and that's everything that will be affected by this floodplain. So residents throughout the last year, I probably deal with 1 or 2 a week with questions on this. And I've been trying to help them out as best as I can, but I've expressed concerns that their home's going to become useless. They can't repair it according to FEMA's rules. They can't rebuild with the DNR's rules. Their homes essentially get stuck in time. So even if you wanted to, let's say, upgrade your laminate countertop to a marble, they maybe couldn't do it with how FEMA's rules are written. So they're very restrictive. And then you got the DNR rules on top of that, which make it even tougher. I kind of mentioned before, the flood storage districts are not regulated by FEMA. It's imposed by the Wisconsin DNR. I've also reached out to the DNR on other methods to raise these homes up, as they only allow you to raise them 2 feet and put the fill around them. I've reached out with some mixed answers and mostly no's from the Wisconsin DNR on other ways to flood proof a home. I recommended stilts, pylons, helical piers, something to try to get this to work for residents. And they said the only way they would allow it would be that 15 feet of fill. And going back to it, it's impossible on these small lake lots to do. That is the gist of it. The resolution's still being drafted. We've been working on it. But we plan to go out there, is it June or July? June 30th, yeah. June 30th to talk to the residents on this issue, as they've had a ton of concerns. I don't really blame them on it.
Questions by the committee? Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple random questions.
Sure.
First one is the homes being stuck in time
Mhm.
comment. Is that what no renovation permits would be issued, or what's really the pause on there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That rule where I'm referencing being stuck in time is a FEMA rule. So if a home is deemed in the floodplain, it's assessed at the town level, and there's a ratio they assign to it. So how I like to think of it, if a home, we'll say it's a $200,000 assessed home, and they've done no work to it, they'd have about $100,000 to work with in upgrades, possibly additions if they can get it work. But that's any upgrade. So say if you want to get really technical, if you're upgrading your siding to a nice wood siding, that would be counted against you. So over time, these upgrades, once you get to $100,000 of upgrades, which doesn't take very long nowadays, you redo a bathroom, it's 20, 30,000. FEMA says you cannot upgrade your home further until you raise the home and get it to comply with their regulations. Essentially, you can't do anything to the home until you get it to comply.
So they're not they're capped at total improvements based off of the current assessment,
Exactly.
and is it the county's job to enforce that by
Correct. Yeah.
Or denying a county permit?
100%. Yep. So they can audit us too. So if we're not following the rules, they can audit us. And the big deal about it is they're the suppliers of the national flood insurance to keep rates down for residents. If for some reason we said we're not going to follow the rules and FEMA comes and audits, which they've been starting to do in Wisconsin, or they say they're going to start doing, they could take away flood insurance for residents here and their prices would get hiked up as they'd have no subsidy from the federal level.
Okay, so it's not like the township would be denying the permits, it's at the county levels where we'd be the bad person enforcing that.
Exactly, yep. The DNR gets involved. They're kind of like an agent for FEMA. So if they saw we weren't doing our job here, they'd report to FEMA and then both of them would be after us. The DNR also has more stringent rules than FEMA does. So it makes it even tougher to be able to build. And that's more on how to build a new home though, not so much the 50% rule. That's a FEMA rule. That's a whole different ball game.
Okay, and then the presentation slides was talking about a resolution. What type of a resolution are we working on, or what's the intent of it, or who's going to be the recipient of it?
Right. It's still kind of in the works. I think the main goal would be to go after the state level, the DNR, with the flood storage. Right now, I mean, there's a lot of problems with the floodplain rules itself, but I think the best method would be to go after the flood storage itself that the Wisconsin DNR puts on us. It would basically, it'd be going after them for the most part, but it depends. You could expand it and go to a federal level. The big part for residents there though, that really hurts them right now is that flood storage, because it doesn't even give them the option to try to comply with the federal levels. The flood storage just, it makes their property almost useless. So if, you know, their house, if they wanted to rebuild their house, right now you're able to, but it's a long process and there's usually variances involved with the Board of Adjustment. A lot of them are justifiable, but it's a lot of time and money to get engineering to do this. They don't even have that option after flood storage goes into play. It's going to be kind of devastating down in that area.
So is it more to expand the at the state level options, or kind of not
Correct.
not so much
Not
repealing the designation of it, it's
right.
what the rules of that designation are.
Right, 100%. Other states allow other methods and engineered methods to be able to comply and raise a home. Wisconsin doesn't. It's, you bring fill in, you put 15 feet of fill around it, and that's your only option. Now, other states allow the pylons or helical piers or other engineered methods that are engineer stamped, and you're able to go that route. Even FEMA recognizes those. But because the Wisconsin DNR is more stringent, we cannot use those methods that FEMA allows.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Supervisor Mary?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It sounds to me like we've got some residents and some constituents who are caught up in a whole bunch of catch-22s. If they're limited on updating their homes, are we looking at a situation come near term that these homes are going to be unsaleable? No one's going to want to buy them because you can't update them. You can't make modifications to them. You're very restricted. Is this where this is going to?
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. That's what it would go to eventually. Once the homes, how I believe FEMA has it written is they don't want homes in the floodplain at all. So they don't give you any leniency. Basically, they say as time goes on, those homes will get, their value will be sucked up in renovations. And once you can't do anything, the home's got to be removed or you got to get to comply, which is very difficult for the average person to do. It might even be impossible depending on the lot.
What recourse is there to the homeowner?
Move out of floodplain.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's basically what it is. Get it to comply, or as FEMA suggests, move your home out of the floodplain, which is not really realistic for a lot of people.
Well, if you've got small lots, you don't have a lot of place to move it to.
Exactly. Their suggestion is to move it to higher ground on possibly a different lot, but that's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. It might not even be possible.
So what can the county do to protect our residents in protecting their homes? What can we do?
right? I think the first step is to show support for the residents. We kind of get pitched as the bad guys in this situation. But I think showing support for the residents is key. And then starting with this resolution at a state level, to get notice out. This isn't just a Washington County problem. This is a statewide problem. I work with a lot of other counties. I used to work for another county, and it's the same across the board. So I think starting something would show support, and I think we would get some other county support through this too.
So you're saying with a combined effort with other governmental bodies such as ours, there
Mhm.
could be a way to get DNR to reverse itself on some of these rules?
Possibly, yeah, that'd be the ultimate goal. As of now, we're kind of stuck, unfortunately. There's not much we can do on a county level. The state law trumps us, and the federal regulations also trumps us. It's not something either where we're going, looking at a house that's redone. We're not really going after anybody for it. But if it does come up, unfortunately, if FEMA was to audit us, they could catch some of that and we could possibly get in trouble.
Well, it sounds to me like it's the homeowners who are stuck.
No,
They're
right.
stuck with the property they can't improve and they may not be able to sell.
Right. I think a lot of them are unaware from even a realtor aspect is sometimes they buy into this, and maybe you say this as a property owner not doing their research, but unfortunately a lot of property owners don't realize that. So they buy their lake lot and they want to do a big addition. Happens all the time, and they're just unable to do it because they didn't know about these rules.
Well, the way the rules and the codes are written, most civilian people couldn't understand them anyway.
That's fair.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep, of course.
Supervisor Pridemore, did you wish to weigh in on this?
This is a great disappointment for the neighbors. I think that's in my backyard, isn't that Aaron?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
What was the method used to determine this new floodplain?
Yeah, I would say it was primarily LiDAR data. I don't know the exact process of it, but it's not like there's someone physically out there. So there could be a lot of errors in this LiDAR data. Unfortunately, no one appealed it. It's really expensive to appeal it. So if someone said, yeah, I don't agree with this LiDAR data, my lot's up higher, they would have had to physically hire an engineer and do a full study on their lot, submit it to us, and we would back them. And then we would send to the DNR and they would review and change that data. No one did that though. It's really expensive. But yeah, it's all basically done from a computer, satellite photos.
There was some discussion of creating flood storage somewhere else nearby here, right, to compensate.
Carol Mary's not gonna hear.
The model. I know that was something that was discussed with Druid Lake is the creation of the flood storage nearby instead, and trying to a creative solution for them. But nothing came of it at this point.
I do know Druid Lake. Early on when I started here, I went to their meeting to help kind of discuss this issue, tell residents how this worked. And I know they put a lot of money in with attorneys to go after the DNR on this, but I don't think it went anywhere. I think the attorneys dropped it as they didn't think there was a valid solution to keep this going on their end. So they've tried on their end, but yeah, they feel really stuck at this point, and they are stuck at this point.
Well, I won't speak for the committee. I'm going to speak for myself at this point, but I'm sure I probably will have some support among this committee. This is once again the heavy hand of the DNR and the federal government, not the heavy hand of your county. But although we are under the auspices of the federal government and the state government, but we represent the people, the same people that are living in their homes out on Druid Lake. And so to send out a message to them, if there is some way that we can help, I believe that I would like to try, with the understanding that I still have a set of rules that I operate under. But we do, so or I do at least support them and in this, because I think it's a bit of an overreach. And I think it's a whole lot unfair for my part. So should the resolution come down that we tell the DNR, hey, we don't like this and this is not the way we do business, I would be definitely willing to sign on to something like that. So, like I said, I'm not going to speak for the committee. I'm just going to speak for myself, and it gets me in hot water, so be it. But I think the people of Druid Lake should know that your representatives on this committee do support you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Carol, Mary, Supervisor Mary, please.
Yeah, I concur totally with your comments, Mr. Kelling. I would like to think whatever resolution we put forward on behalf of the residents of the county, we have the full force, that this resolution has the full force and the impetus to the DNR that Washington County does not like this tactic. And some of our residents are just plainly getting overruled, as you said, overreach. And I think whatever resolution we draft should be as forceful as possible that this should be changed. I agree totally with your comments, sir. Thank you.
I will add, I believe the county executive described it as a form of taking of the wealth of some of these residents, and that there wasn't a lot that they can do. And so when this came up, I think he wanted to, and we are, and I think Brett mentioned this, but wanted to meet directly with the residents on kind of some of the points before crafting or before directing us to kind of take a look at what that resolution language looks like.
And yeah, that kind of goes back to my point that, we are constituents with these people. We are they, so, yeah, I can't wait to go after the DNR, and hopefully if we get a new governor in, that they'll kind of relax the DNR a little bit, because I think they do overreach. It used to be really bad. Now it's just bad. Okay. So, but it still could be improved. They need to work with our constituents much better. And I don't think this is a very good example of working with the people. So, Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you. How are you meeting with the residents out there? Like, do they have a PRD board that like you use to kind of bring them together?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah, no, I was in contact with Jim Bartz, who's the head of that PRD. And we do a meeting scheduled on June 30th. I believe it's at 6, I think it's 6 o'clock.
Where's that?
That'd be at the Aaron Town Hall. Yep. Hopefully the word gets out. And I mean, I've been working with a lot of these people, and I mean, it's kind of devastating to hear when they can't do anything to their home at all, or they're stuck. There's only so much I can do to try to help out. So I think it's got to get pushed at a higher level to fix some of these issues, which are clearly a problem.
The appeal process, which is already coming past,
Mm-hmm.
if they would have someone would have gone through that, would that have been similar to like if you would be like appealing like a wetland delineation or something where you have to hire your own expert and
Yes. Yep.
go through the
And then
process?
yes, and then the DNR would look at your data and say, is it valid or not? But it's on the cost of the homeowner to do that. And the LiDAR data that they use could have a lot of error. So you might have an error. You might be paying for someone to relook at it to fix the problem that the DNR possibly created.
Is there a possibility for people to still challenge these maps once they become official? Because like you can always go after like a wetland delineation. I don't know if this is similar or different like that, where you can amend the map in smaller sections moving forward.
Right. So, yep. No, you're 100% right. At that point, you don't go to the DNR. You'd have to go to FEMA itself. They'd call it a LOMA or a LOMAR, depending on what your situation is. And that essentially is a map amendment to the floodplain. With that, it's very expensive. Just to submit the paperwork, I believe it was $6,000 or $7,000, and you might get denied. And that's not counting your survey cost. I mean, it becomes over 10 grand, 20 grand project to possibly get a no. And I think a lot of people hit that route and then they say it's not worth it and they don't end up building, or they sell their lot as unusable lot when it may still be usable. But that's the route you'd have to go. They work with a surveyor. They'll send us a community acknowledgement form, which I'll look at, stating, yeah, it complies with our local rules. I sign it, and then that gets passed on to FEMA, and then they review everything from there. They give me back a letter that says this area is amended. Please put this in your file. And then we can issue permits, a normal permit in that area if it's not in the floodplain.
Okay. This feels like a lot of how the rules, the state rules used to be around regards to boathouses. You're only allowed certain improvements to it up to assessed values. And it was done by design because at the end of the day, they were trying to get rid of them at that time. So this feels the same other than instead with boathouse, it's a primary residence. So obviously I would hope that we do have more passion and consideration for it. Does the state offer any type of variances, like that type of avenue moving forward, or is that something that as part of that future resolution that we would hope the state to expand on that? Because obviously flood storage is there for a reason, because there will be a flood there at some point. And that's at that point that these homeowners then will be looking for help and assistance for being in a flood.
Right.
So yes, we are trying to protect them for something that maybe they want to be protected from, but at the same time, kind of finding that variance path, that middle ground to allow them to find that compromise, I guess.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. I think it is to open up the regulations so we don't have to do the variance path, to make it more straightforward for people to build or make a addition to the home. Right now, you pretty much need a variance for anything down there. It's usually due to the small lot size. I mean, so the DNR does make a recommendation. So if we get a variance, we had recommendations from the DNR on both of these variances we recently had, and they both were not in favor of them. Even though they made the suggestions for some of these to be able to get their blessing per se. But yeah, it pretty much is a variance for anything, and the DNR is almost gonna say no to all of
That's
them.
a county variance still, but like.
Correct. No, there's nothing
Going
on,
through the state, through the DNR agency, is there any type of?
no, nothing on the DNR agency. So they put it on us. So the variance, they give their recommendation. But if we say our Board of Adjustment approves both and the DNR doesn't like it, they kind of sent a nasty message to me about it on the last two variances, but they can give a comment on it and they could audit us if we keep allowing these variances.
So even though we are legally allowed to issue a variance, if we issue too many variances, what happens?
Yeah, then the worst possibility is they'll pull the flood insurance program at the federal level. And I don't know the results of what would happen with that.
Just be uninsurable.
Yeah, rates would go sky high for residents. So that's the ultimate threat. They could do fines too if they deem we're passing unfavorable variances, even though it's our responsibility. I've seen them on counties. It's about $5,000 a day until you fix the problem. It can get pretty nasty pretty fast.
Final question or comment is, as far as the resolutions, I think there might be an opportunity to go multiple avenues or multiple resolutions, maybe one more towards FEMA DNR route.
Sure.
Separate one, and I don't know timing with the WCA convention, but more just trying to find partnership through other counties and stuff through like the counties association to help build a coalition for finding other means and methods to protect people from these losses.
Right. No, this resolution, you could do almost 3 or 4 different drafts at different levels. You go after both. You could pick or choose what rule you wanted to go after. There's probably about 2 or 3 or 4 rules or regulations that you could pick. You could pick to go after them all, or you could pick one. Most of them will go after the federal level. Kind of the route we were thinking, we could change this or send multiple resolutions, but really was that flood storage and allowing residents to have other ways to build up a home instead of the fill. But no, there could be multiple resolutions if that's what you'd like to see.
Okay.
Anybody else? I would say consensus. Oh, Carol, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to reinforce what you said before, and I have a feeling I'm going to say what you were going to say. Although it's my personal opinion, I just wish, as one member of this board, of this committee perhaps, that we can just stress that the county is behind and is support these people in any way we can to try to overcome this problem. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Mary, and of course, you and I are always on the same path. You have a consensus. Personally, I'd like to see the DNR be certainly a resolution against them, because I do believe that we probably have a greater ear of the DNR, even with the current administration, that, you know, we're still under their auspices. They're our first point of contact. So I would definitely support something like that, as well as FEMA. And you've heard all the questions here and the statements. So I think that hopefully gives you enough consensus and understanding and helping you draft your resolution.
100%.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Fair Park Modernization Project.
Yes, thank you. So this was placed on this agenda as an update. The bids on this project came back today at noon, so there wasn't time to include kind of the results of that in your packet. But it was an exciting day for this project. The bids came back very favorable to our total project budget and our borrow. So at this point, we are looking at a full award of the project with feeling very good about it. So we will be looking at doing the base audio and control systems, the upgraded power distribution, the lighting systems upgrades, which is essentially a 1-for-1 fixture replacement on the entire site. Acoustics upgrades, generally speaking, exterior audio, pole mounted alternates, the exterior lighting and controls, the exterior doors at the Ziegler Center, bathroom updates in both the pavilion and the Ziegler Center, video systems throughout the building, the acoustics upgrade portion, music and support areas. So we had broken out the acoustical improvements into kind of bare bones and what we would like to do, just because we weren't sure how bids were going to come back. So you see some of those kind of A, B options, mechanical updates throughout the park, some very minor improvements to signage, shades and automation in the conference rooms to support kind of the lighting and technology changes, exterior color changing lights, cabinet and millwork in what's kind of the 4-H conference rooms, if you've been in the conference room. So we're going to be redoing the cabinetry, clean technical power, which was just kind of a change out to the power. And we are looking at a project schedule so beginning sometime later this summer through early next spring. So we're excited. We are finalizing some due diligence on the bids and how they came back before we know exactly which bid we'll be selecting. Just want to make sure that the low bid is capturing the completion of the project, but it's looking good, and it's going to hopefully allow us to do a really great project out there. So that's really my full update. I wasn't sure where those were going to come back, and so that's kind of why it was a little bit vague in terms of what type of report you'd be getting tonight.
Okay, any questions by the committee? Supervisor Krebs?
When would you expect to fully vet that and publicly release who would get it? And
no later than next Friday.
Supervisor Mary?
Congratulations, Jamie. I know this has been a long road to get to where we are today, and I'm glad the numbers came in apparently favorable to what we want to do. I think with your efforts, and I know you've been beating the drum on this very, very hard for a long time to get me off your back, in jest, of course. Thank you. And again, congratulations on the work that everybody has put into this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Mary. And I'd just like to stay to the AIS. We made a promise and promises are being kept. So with that, we send our kind regards from this committee, and here's to a very successful fair coming up. And hopefully by next year, we'll be seeing another great fair, but this time with a much more modern approach to its sound and lighting and all the rest of that. So I hope they're very thrilled and happy with what they're seeing coming, and I hope that that excites them towards the future.
Yep, please take a yard sign.
Will do, absolutely. Thrilled that you brought those in. Thank you very much for those. With that, that concludes our business for this meeting, so I'll call it adjourned. Our next meeting will be July 17th.
Thank you.